Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Anna. My name is Tamara Fike with Love in a Big World, and I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm so glad that you are joining us today. I had some last minute updates to make to our presentation, so thank you for your patience with me while I did that. I'm going to share this with you. Can everybody see the screen okay? Great, great. My co-host, at least for the top part of our presentation, is Allison Montiel from Future School in Fort Smith, and she will be sharing in just a moment. Before she does that, I would love to share a brief video just to get us started today, and so you can get grounded with Love in a Big World.
Sometimes a smile is a gift. A helping hand is a lifesaver. And choosing words that build can change a person's world. It's the move you make that benefits. The choice you make that prods connection. It's what is needed. Sometimes it's sharing a meal. Helping others when they fall. It's considering another's needs. See, in this world, we all need it. This place can be tough and days can be hard. Sometimes it's a listening ear, an encouraging word, silence and presence. Cause life comes at you hard. Sometimes it's a small act, a grand gesture, or an action that pushes someone to keep going through the day. It's what we need in this world. The gift we can give one to another. Kindness.
So that is just a video, one of our spoken word videos, and I will refer to that more in a little bit later. But today we're going to be talking about kindness in our mini lesson. And kindness is treating others the way that we want to be treated. And just to give you a bit of background on our work with the Big Picture Learning Network, Allison Montiel, who again is the principal at Future School in Fort Smith, is going to talk about our partnership that we've had over this past year. And then I'll give you greater context because Allison needs to go pick up kids. So I'll give you the history of our partnership with the Big Picture Learning Network at large, and then give an overview of the purpose of Love in a Big World. We're going to do a mini lesson and then have plenty of time for Q&A. So thank you, Allison, for taking some time this afternoon. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tamara, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to give a testimonial about our time with Love in a Big World. It's not been too many months since we initially adopted Love in a Big World. We started it in January here at Future School of Fort Smith in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And my name is Allison Montiel, I'm the principal. I get to be the leader at this amazing school full of wonderful kids, young people who are excited and filled with thoughts of hope and passion about what they want to do, but are, as many teenagers are, a little bit lost in a world of sometimes despair, confusion, and misunderstanding, especially as all of our lives have been interrupted over the last 2 years. Our state was proactive in identifying that SEL competencies are important. And so they mandated a short while ago that all schools adopt a curriculum. They put out a list of possibilities. And we looked at the list and said, these programs, this curriculum doesn't necessarily align with who we are as an organization, as a BPL school. So I went in search of one that I felt like was more in accord with the messages that we wanted to send our kids. I was on a community of practice webinar with our BPL coach, Sun Sam, yay Sun, and he was introducing Love in a Big World, and I was hooked. So Love in a Big World felt to me like a good fit because it's literacy based and uses poetry to teach the characteristics. We got in touch with Tamara pretty quickly and got a partnership conversation going. She was very receptive, so easy to work with. I'm so grateful. that we were able to quickly kind of bring samples onto campus, spread them around, take a look at what the opportunities were there. We decided to pilot for spring semester and put it in the 10th and 11th grade advisories. We did that because we felt like this was a longstanding program that we wanted to potentially implement. So we chose those particular grade levels because they would have some longevity there before kids graduated. It seemed to be a big hit. The teachers' uptake of it seemed to be pretty positive after some good training, and the kids have really liked it. Some of the kids, especially the ones that we were a little bit feeling like they might be on the margins with the idea of diving into poetry, really connected with it. And my favorite moment from a Love in a Big World pilot over this last year or last 6 months or so was when I had a group sitting in my office raving about the poem that they had just read and how they felt like they could implement that particular characteristic in their life. And they came to me to talk about it. So I felt like that was a big win. We look forward to implementing it school-wide over this next year with all of our students, and we're really excited. So I highly encourage you guys to give it a good hard look, think about how it would fit in your school and what it speaks to as far as your value set that you would like to share with your own students. So thank you, Tamara, for your hard work, and we really appreciate the opportunity to partner with you.
Thank you so much, Allison, and we appreciate the opportunity to partner with you in Arkansas as well. So I'm going to give you a bigger context of our work with the network. In, I guess it was 2018, 2019, I met with Lynn Lavender, who was the SEL coordinator at Nashville Big Picture here locally where we live and are located. And she had read our book, Building People, which you see on screen. And she was asking if we had a high school curriculum. And at that time, we only had kindergarten through 8th grade. So we agreed to pilot with Lynn and with the students and administrators of the Big Picture Learning Network School here in Nashville to create our high school curriculum. So the work that we've done that Allison spoke of with the poetry series really came out of a collaboration with the students, the teachers, and the administrators at Nashville Big Picture. And that it's been a continued partnership, and we're going into year 3. So in the 2020-21 year, during the craziness of the pandemic, we did expand. The first year was juniors because juniors was where they were having the most challenges behaviorally. Second year, we started with freshmen, with the seniors, and then in January, we brought on the freshmen. This year, we will be working with freshmen and sophomores. So it's just been a mix of the different ages depending upon the needs of the school. And that's what's really great, is that we can tailor our work to meet the needs that you have and your students have. So the other exciting thing is that I had 2 NBP senior interns work with me for the 2021 school year, and they were fabulous. And so that gave me not only some much needed help, but also a greater understanding of the Big Picture Learning Network. And I'm a huge fan, not only as an educator, but as a mom. I think that the learning model is great, and I really recommend it to all my kids. I have 3. They're now 23, 18, and 15. And so I'm just like, if you can have this hands-on learning experience, it will change your life. As Allison mentioned, we met at the webinar last fall, and then we connected, and they started with the implementation during the pandemic. And we're going to continue both with Nashville Big Picture and Future School this upcoming year. And one of the things that we've changed as we've grown is that in our relationships with these schools is that we've expanded our offering. So we have the Learning from Poetry series that Allison mentioned, and then new for this year is In Their Words, which is a connection of historical figures, quotes, and the 24 character traits that I'll show you in just a second, as well as current events. So helping to make those connections, because we are always looking at the real life application of what we're teaching. These are the 24 character traits that we focus on. And what we've done with our spiral curriculum K through 12 is provide a kid-friendly definition so everybody can be on the same page within the learning community. We also provide supports to teachers and administrators, as well as to families, so that connection can go beyond the classroom to the entire school community. So for what we're focusing on today, we do have, like I said, K through 12. So if you're in middle school, we can work with you. If you're high school, we can work with you. What I love about our offering is that it's culturally relevant, as you saw from the example with the spoken word video, multimodal. So it gives lots of different ways for kids to learn about character education, social and emotional learning, which we define as being able to identify what's going on in our heads and in our hearts, so we can use our hands to build up and not tear down. That we are emphasizing literacy and the arts. It can be student-led. We've run pilots with that at both sites, and it fosters meaningful conversation and connection, both within the learning time, which usually occurs within advisory, and then afterwards, as Allison mentioned, with the sweet words of her students coming to track her down and tell her what they learned. So I'm going to dive into a Love in a Big World experience for you. And our hope in planning this session was that we'd either have a student, one of my interns, who graduated in May and is now really hard to get a hold of, or a teacher which just moved from her position at Future School to another position. So you got me. I tried. But I'm going to go ahead and lead you through, and you can imagine what it would be like with your students. But for the sake of our time together, I'd like you to just go ahead and enter in fully and experience what Love in a Big World is all about. So as I mentioned at the top, kindness is treating others the way you want to be treated. And today we're going to look at a poem by Allison Joseph called Caroline. And I'm going to ask if there might be somebody who would like to read this poem for us. Is there somebody who'd like to volunteer? All right, I will go ahead and read. In 8th grade, we teased that girl as much as we could, mocking her clothes, her stringy hair, her flat, pallid face that revealed little protest. Used to being the one white girl in our class of Blacks, Hispanics, she endured our taunts on her lack of rhythm, on her stiff, flat-butted walk. How we pitied her brown hair, parted, straight, pulled back in a dull ponytail, her jeans or corduroy pants in washed-out shades of blue or gray, her homework neatly done in pained, legible print. How weak it was to be white, we thought, not able to dance or run fast, to have skin that peeled from too much sun. We never let Caroline forget that she was white and we were Black, that we could swing our hips and snap our fingers without trying, privy to street slang rhythms, but she was our white girl. And if anyone else dared to touch her or call her names, we'd be on them in a second, calling them ugly right back, slapping offenders if necessary. With one of us by her side, she could walk to school safely, knowing she was ours, even if we didn't let her in, all the way, even if we laughed at her white speech, thin lips. This poem is from a collection called Poetry Speaks Who I Am, which is where all of the poems for this curriculum come from. So again, kindness is treating others the way you want to be treated. And with this poem in mind, I'd love for you to take a few minutes let's go ahead and go to breakout rooms, and Anna's going to help us with that. And I'll put these questions again in the chat and talk about the relationship between Caroline and her peers, how you think Caroline felt knowing she was ours, even if we didn't let her in. And then the Our Big World question, how can you build a healthy relationship or friendship with people who are different from you? Anna, would you help us?
Absolutely. How long would you like the breakout room to stay open?
We can go for 7 minutes.
Okay, let me set that, and then everyone will get an invite to join the room.
Good. All right. Well, thank you all for your sharing in your groups, and thank you for coming back. So let's talk about your experience as you were sharing. And I tried to broadcast the questions so that you could have a meaningful conversation in your group. But feel free to unmute and share your experience.
Our group, all three of us in our group, our small little group, we all noted that we were surprised by the end of the poem where there was some seeming kindness, where they would defend Caroline if there was anyone else abusing her. But we came to understand that that was actually, it turned out to be quite cruel, because it puts Caroline in this weird psychological place where this is okay to be treated this way. We talked about it sort of like this cycle of abuse, where it feels like it's not all bad, so maybe it's okay. So that was kind of an interesting little twist that we thought, it caught our attention, but also it made us think it's actually pretty cruel. It keeps her in this trapped space. It wasn't just overtly mistreating her.
Thank you for sharing. I will say the feedback we've gotten on this poem, especially from the kids at Big Picture Nashville, they loved it. Like, they talked about this for weeks and months on end because they could really relate to the content. Thank you for that. Someone else, please.
We said that the way that the girls sort of looked out for her, but in an unkind way, it was almost like she was sort of like encaptured there. So a little bit like what was just said a minute ago, but it's almost like better the devil you know than the devil you don't. It was almost like that, like she had some sort of safety there, even if it was a misguided safety.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Thank you for that.
I think we mostly focused on the last question in terms of talking about there's stuff you can learn from everybody, no matter what you have in common or what's different, that you just look for commonalities.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dan. Any other closing thoughts about this poem and the questions and the conversation that you shared together? Okay, great. So usually, and I'm going to flip back to this slide right here. With Love in a Big World, what we do is we have a time where we introduce the character trait that we're discussing, like we did with kindness, read the poem, have that guided conversation, and then give students an opportunity to journal. So with the learning from poetry, we're encouraging them to write some poetry in response. And then by the end of the year, they can choose to have a poetry slam and share their poems and have those poems align with the themes that they've been learning all year long. And the first semester that we were able to do this before COVID at Nashville, Big Picture, it was phenomenal to hear how much the kids shared, just very much like that poem, Caroline, how much they shared about their own experience at home and at school, and what they learned and how they could relate better to themselves and better to others. And some of those revelations came from sharing their own pain, like we saw displayed in this poem. But helping kids to make the connection between poetry and rap was also one of the hooks that helped them see, oh, okay, poetry isn't such a big stretch for me. I listen to this stuff all the time. So that's the reading the poem, having the conversation, the journaling. Then there's opportunities for the leaders, whether it's the advisor or the student leader, to share a personal story. So what we're really hoping for, and somebody mentioned this a few moments ago, is vulnerability. And vulnerability breeds connection. Providing a safe place, I guess that was in my breakout room, providing a safe place for kids to be vulnerable, to let them know, hey, what happens here in advisory stays in advisory. This is a safe place for you to share. And when they realize their experience is not just isolated to themselves, but there are others like them who are going through the same thing. Maybe that person doesn't look like them. Maybe that person doesn't live in the same type of neighborhood or part of town that they live in, but they're experiencing the same thing, promotes that common humanity. And when you looked at those 24 character traits, I hoped what you saw, and I'll go back to them just for a second, is that these are things we can all agree on, regardless of race, nationality, political affiliation, gender orientation. I mean, all of it, we can all agree that these are things that make us human. And we need to treat each other with kindness and caring. We need to be honest and self-controlled. I mean, these are some things that we can all agree on. And in a very polarized society, I think we need more that we can agree on. So then after the teacher story or the student leader story, we provide activities, multimodal activities that kids can do so it's hands-on. It's not just, okay, let me sit and listen or read or write, but it's let me get my hands on it. And there can be connections with what they're doing in other content areas at school. So whether it's an art project, I mean, the kids were doing things like poetry or running circles for other students, creating a peace room, writing, making music. I mean, just using their gifts and talents and putting that into play, but carrying along these themes and even making connections to exhibition. So there's lots of ways to be creative and to connect the dots. So it's not just, oh, this is one more thing on my plate or one more thing on my student's plate, but this is really a thread that can be helpful in weaving together these different parts of the learning experience at school. So I'm going to open it up right now to questions from you. And I was told by somebody else who's attended Big Bang before that the question and answer time is super important. So I want to give as much time as needed for you all to ask questions. And I'm doing that teacher thing that we do when you pause quietly and wait.
Is the poetry book that you put on available on Amazon or?
Yes, it is available on Amazon. It's also a book that for those who choose to adopt our curriculum, we can make that available with the purchase of the curriculum.
Thank you.
And there are some schools that want just one for each advisory. And then we've also had schools that have wanted one poetry book for each student.
Okay.
So there's a lot of flexibility in the implementation model. I'm going to the chat because I see there's some questions there. Yes. So about the 24 character traits, I'm going to go back here. These are the 24 character traits that we focus on. There was a question in the chat from Mike about this. These are the 24 character traits. And we start off with choice being the opportunity and power to make decisions, because it's really important for self-efficacy for kids to know they do have a choice about what they do and what they say, and they can take ownership of that. And we have 6 different modules, 4 character traits each, and they progress. So there is a scope and sequence. So in the first module, it's choice, courage. Courage is standing up for what is right, facing your fears. Honesty, speaking and acting truthfully. And kindness, treating others the way you want to be treated. And then we move on from there. Other questions?
I see one from Cindy in the chat to
Okay.
Mara.
Great. Thank you, Anna. So with, that's a great question, Cindy. She's asking, do you select poems by grade level? Are there different versions of the book based on grade level? I work with grades 7 and 8. So that's a wonderful question. Love in a Big World is a spiral curriculum, K through 12. So we focus on these same 24 character traits and the same definitions, because what we're trying to do is build a common vocabulary. And I know that you all being part of Big Picture understand that idea of common vocabulary. So we want to have that common vocabulary across the school community. But what we do is provide grade and age level specific content for those conversations according to grade level. So for K through 8, there are 3 different series. And it's learning from stories, learning from heroes, and learning from life. And then that pattern repeats through those 9 grades. For high school, so your 7th and 8th grade would be, Cindy, it would be learning from heroes, and there are actual books for that. And then learning from life would be for 8th grade. And that's based on actual letters that we've received from kids and responses to them. For 9th through 12th, we have 2 options, and there's lots of ways you can decide to implement that. One is the Learning from Poetry series that we've been talking about, and we work through a mini lesson of that. And the other is called In Their Words, which focuses on historical figures and quotes and making connections to current events, and then framing it with these 24 character traits. There's another question from Christy. For those who are wanting to apply them work to music, does your program provide those tools? If not, which tools do you often see students using? Are you saying for them to write their own poetry and put it to music? Christy?
Yeah, no, because I have a ton of students. They all want to be, producers and writers and rappers and stuff. And so I was just wondering if, because you had mentioned and your website mentions applying it to music or spoken word. And so I didn't know if there were certain tools you guys provide, or if there are just certain tools that you feel like you've seen a lot being used through your programs that have been like easy to use for students, adaptable, that sort of thing. Sorry, I wasn't very clear. I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That's a great question. So we do not provide those digital tools. What we do provide are music that we've created ourselves and the spoken word videos that we've created ourselves, so that there are samples for what the kids can create. But I know that kids, they're so savvy. There's so many tools that are out there today for helping them make their own beats. Thank you, Dan. He had to leave early. Very similar to the Positivity Project character traits. Have you worked with them? Cindy, no, we have not worked with the Positivity Project. Love in a Big World has been in existence since 1996. So for the past 25 years, we've been teaching these 24 character traits. I know that there's a lot of growth and movement in the SEL space, especially right now, since there's been so much funding allocated toward SEL post-pandemic. There's a lot of great tools out there, but I'm not familiar with Positivity Project. I did put our website in the chat if you want to check that out. And then if you happen to have middle school, well, actually, I'd say high school too, you can also check out musiccitykids.com, which is an educational show that we started in March of 2020. And there's a portion of that called By Kids for Kids that if you would choose to partner with us, your kids are welcome to create content that we would broadcast so that they can share what they've learned with other kids like them. So before we close, I see that Anna put a link in the chat for feedback, and I want to share my information with you in case you have continued questions after our session. This is how you can reach me, Tamara at liveinabigworld.org. Phone number, there's all of our socials and the website, and Allison's name. We had a last minute change, so I did not have the opportunity to add her email address for you. What I will say is that there is a lot of beauty in the simplicity of Love in a Big World. And also, what we've learned over 25 years is that often educators feel overwhelmed with the responsibilities that they have. And to provide tools and resources to help facilitate meaningful conversations in order to build healthy relationships and positive connections with your kids is what we're about. So a lot of research has gone into this work. And if you would like to learn more, I'm happy to share a white paper with you and give you more on that. We go into that in our training with leaders. But our job is to help you facilitate those healthy relationships, because kids need us. And now more than ever before, they need support from caring adults. So thank you for your work. Thank you for your commitment to and your continued commitment, even in this crazy time. And whatever we can do to help and support you, we're here.